Well, here we are. It's the home stretch. Finally, we'll stop getting text messages from, worthy candidates wanting yet another campaign donation. It's finally going to all be over and done. And in this home stretch, just hours to go before Tuesday voting begins, what is it that the mainstream media and the Democrats want you to know moving forward in this election?
This means war. That is where we are. We are at war with these people. These folks are evil.
There is an ultra-right MAGA contingent in this country that wants to overthrow the U.S. government.
It is a danger to our democracy. It is a danger to our way of life.
The MAGA movement is a threat.
The extremists that we're dealing with every single day, we've got to kill and confront that movement.
Clearly, this is a literally call to arms.
Obviously, Republicans, I think, are the biggest threat to democracy. We don't separate right-wing extremists and Republican Party anymore.
I see this as a party, a MAGA party that no longer is confident that they can win elections with votes. And so now they're seeking to enact their political will through violence.
This is literally what conservative white folks do when they don't get their way. They turn violent.
Today's GOP is no longer a political movement. It is a fascist movement.
And this is why it could be more dangerous than 1860 or the 1930s.
Clearly, this is a literally call to arms.
Wait, there's no message about how they're going to deal with inflation? They're not talking about how they can handle the crisis at the border. There's no talk about making our cities and our neighborhoods safer with the out-of-control crime that's literally happening everywhere. No talk about getting gas prices down. No talk about improving the supply chain crisis that we have, that you can't even buy a new car right now because we can't get the computer chips from China and all these other places. None of that's being addressed. The stuff that actually affects your everyday life. If you vote for a Republican, you are putting an end to democracy. Let me see. Who is it that's really the existential threat to democracy? Who is it that's really about authoritarian control? Who is it? Which political party, which political ruling class was all about never-ending lockdowns and mandates, and you must obey, and you must do as we say, and you must give up your freedom of speech, and if you say certain things on certain topics, we will remove you from Twitter. Well, no more, because, we've got the King Twit in there now, Elon Musk. We'll remove you from YouTube. We'll remove you from social media. We will ban you. We will ostracize you. We will vilify you. Who is it that does that? Is that the Republicans? Is that the Republicans that want to bring a woke curriculum into your child's classroom? Is it the Republicans who want drag queens reading stories to 4-year-olds and educating 5- and 6-year-olds on that perhaps maybe kind of could possibly they are non-binary? Is it the Republicans who want to be able to tell you what you can and can't do and where you can and can't do it when it comes to things that are absolutely established for you in the Constitution as guaranteed rights? Was it President Trump or President Obama Biden that said, hey, your Bill of Rights are not guaranteed. The Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, that's not actually a guarantee. Who is it that's the real threat to democracy? Joe Rogan got it right.
No one who is alive today had ever experienced a true pandemic. And I'm hoping that now that this is over, people are going to, recognize that some serious errors were made and not repeat those. That's the best you can get out of it.
So what do you tell those people?
Vote Republican.
The Democrats have absolutely nothing to run on. Nothing. They can't run on the economy. Look at it. They can come out and they can try to lie, and they can try to, again, it all comes down to you're an idiot, you don't know what you're doing as the American voter. And they're not just talking there to Republican voters, they're even talking to their own base. This is how they're supposedly motivating their base to go out and vote. I saw, a headline yesterday Oh, the Democrats have narrowed the enthusiasm gap. Bullhawk, they have. Well, they have, but not the way they think, and I'll get to that in a moment. Trust me, they've got nothing to run on because they can't talk about the economy because the economy is in the tank. People can't afford gas. They can't afford, as we get into the winter months, the out of control fuel prices we're going to be paying to heat our homes, etc. Thank God right now we're enjoying a little bit of that climate change. And, you know, I'm sitting out here outside in Northwest Ohio, very close to my undisclosed secret grain elevator from which I broadcast from. And, you know, it's 60 plus degrees here in November. It's going to get up into the 70s again this week. Bring it on, baby. I love it. You know, every once in a while when it gets too cold in the winter, I sometimes go outside and let off a couple of aerosol cans just to punch another hole in the ozone layer so we can get some warmth back in here. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's called parody, fact checkers. It's called parody. But they can't run on crime, although Kathy Hochul, I think that's how you say her name, the installed governor of New York who replaced Andrew Cuomo after he, you know, killed half the old people in the state during his, you know, brilliant insight into handle a health issue. I have to be very careful how I word things because it doesn't matter that everybody else can talk about how certain alphabet agencies have lifted all of the mandates and are now even coming out and admitting they were wrong about this and they were wrong about that and they were wrong about Love Potion number 9. And other people can now talk about that freely on here and nothing happens. I say anything about any of that and I get time off. I get a vacation. So I can't say anything about any of that. You do know of what I speak, though. So they have nothing to run on but this fear that you aren't appreciative of what they've done for you. The Inflation Reduction Act, which does nothing of the kind. Inflation, boys and girls, is created when a government spends money it doesn't have. And then there's too much money in the market. That's why we have inflation. All of that free money they were handing out and making sure that, you know, they gave you just enough to shut you up. And we had the largest transfer of wealth upward. And corporations became bigger and became even more billionaire-ish, and mom and pop businesses went out and went under and are done. But they've done such a wonderful job. And you got Kathy Hochul in New York talking about Democrat states are the safest states anywhere. She likes to talk about that they have the strictest gun control. And as a result of that, they have some of the lowest gun violence now is in New York City. Apparently, she's missed all of the video footage and all of the news coverage of these illegals and homeless people that are shoving people off of subway platforms into oncoming trains. There are videos of gangs walking around with pipes and hammers and just assaulting people, killing people. People can't go into a Rite Aid drugstore without witnessing shoplifting happening right in front of them, and even the security guards that are standing there do nothing. They're turning criminals loose onto the streets. That's what John Fetterman did. That's what Dr. Oz is running against. Fetterman wants, you know, basically to just empty the prisons. New York, no more bail. And she has the audacity, and a lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media outlet actually pushed back on her on Sunday, and the host said, Governor, I live here in New York. I could tell you, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to go into a convenience store. I'm afraid to go into a store. I'm afraid to walk the streets because you don't know what's going to happen. People are afraid. And the governor was just dismissive of it. Over in Michigan, Governor Whitmer, who is just an absolute lying hag, said recently in a debate against her Republican challenger, why the schools were only closed for 3 months. That is an absolute lie and bullhawk. I can tell you, living 30 minutes from the Michigan border, they were closed for a minimum of 18 months. And some schools just reopened this past spring in 2022. I know people who lived in Michigan who were fined, an actual fine for being outside their home during lockdown and planting a garden in their own backyard. Municipal workers would show up, they would dig up the garden, and they would be handed a citation and a fine for being outside of their homes. I have friends that live in Michigan that would come into Ohio so they could do normal things like, shop, get a haircut, go out to eat. And listen, we had our own issues with little Gary Weiner, and some in the beginning of everything, he had to be just as strict as Cuomo and Newsom. He found out quickly when he was being challenged in the primary, he backed off all of that and stopped being a rhino and became an actual conservative. Of course, I'm sure after tomorrow, we're going to have to put up with him being a rhino again. But that's the reality of what's happening right now. And then you throw on top of it all of their woke bullhawk. You have actors in Hollywood even coming out now and saying, we have to vote Republican when it comes to the mayoral race in Los Angeles. Because the Democrats have no insight, no answers, no solutions whatsoever. This is just going to continue and get worse. And people do want to be safe, and they do want to be able to afford to live. As James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid. And it still is. But you get lectured to by people like Joy Not a Babe Hart on The View, and Whoopi Goldberg, and what's her name, Joy Reid on PMS NBC, talking ad nauseum what a selfish, awful human being you are as an American if the only thing that you are voting on is the economy and the safety of your family. You need to stop these evil Republicans. Because they're the threat to democracy. Who's the threat to democracy? Again, Joe Rogan, who is not a conservative, never was. Then he got through the virus, got over it, and was branded by the establishment legacy media and the establishment narrative that he had done all the wrong things, did it all wrong, and he had to be canceled. And as the scales were lifted from his eyes, he began to realize who the real problem was. As we move into this election cycle, there's one thing that does have people on the conservative side of the aisle concerned. What shenanigans have they got up their sleeves? And I said this in a previous commentary. Some of you didn't get to see it because I was on vacation on certain platforms. So you got to come to Rumble. You got to come to Rumble. You got to come to Rumble. But I said when they're going to work their magic to have the effect and the result they want in an election cycle, one thing they have two categories in which they deal with. They have what they call this is our vote, this is what we know we already have, we get this X percentage, this is ours, that's a done deal. Then they don't think about it, they don't worry about it, and they go over here and they focus on what they don't have. This election cycle, you're going to see something that we haven't seen since the days Ronald Reagan won New York. Democrats, and I mean by and large, are going to cross the line. They are going to go into the privacy of that voting booth, and they have had it with the woke nonsense. They have had it with the out-of-control crime. They have had it with the out-of-control inflation, and they are going to vote red in massive numbers that the Democrats themselves do not yet understand. And if there is now an enthusiasm climbing the charts on the Democratic side that they're now really excited about going to vote, they're going to vote red, not blue. And again, even Joe Rogan gets that.
I think the red wave that's coming is going to be like the elevator doors opening up in The Shining. That's what I think. I think people are just like, what the f*** are you saying? They're making Republicans.
I don't know how they're doing it. I had a family member who's a boomer and a diehard liberal, and they told me when I was home this summer that they would vote for DeSantis, and I'm like, how did you lose this person?
Yeah.
How did you lose this person? This is a like go to the ballot and vote blue no matter what, and you've lost even the boomers.
You've lost a lot of them that aren't talking about it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. You know, you're seeing in New York City, Hochul, like debating that Republican candidate, that guy gained ground. Like they're worried about New York becoming Republican, which is wild.
I was reading last night an article about in Oregon, there's an independent woman running and then a Democrat and a Republican, and the Republican they think might win. Biden was in Oregon like stumping for the Democratic candidate because they're so worried Oregon's going to have a Republican governor the first time in 40 years.
That's wild.
Oregon.
Well, it almost happened in New York City, or in New Jersey, rather.
Oregon.
New Jersey got down to the wire, and New Jersey's another place
Yeah.
like that. It's always been Democrat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I really think that all the polls and all that stuff, that's indicative of like the mindset of a lot of people that are willing to take polls.
Which is not that many
Not
people.
that many, but there's a lot of people silently that are like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And it's not just that, it's crime. Crime
Yeah.
is the big one. The way they're handling crime, the way they're releasing people that are committing violent crimes and then putting them right back on the street. People are freaking the fuck out.
It's the one aspect of the polling data that we don't have. There's no prediction for it. There's no way to categorize it this time because people are being quiet. They may be saying the right things if they're so inclined to talk to a pollster. But when they are alone in that voting booth, they have had it. The Democrats have way overplayed their hand. They are the authoritarians. They are the threat to democracy, and even Democratic voters understand that. Winston Churchill motivated an entire nation to stand up against the Nazis. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, though I did not agree with his political ideologies, motivated an economically depressed America. These men spoke inspiring words. They knew how to uplift. Our current leadership comes out, they scorn, they scold, they threaten. FDR once said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." And the Democrats are now saying, "We have nothing to offer but fear. Be afraid of MAGA. MAGA attacked our Capitol. MAGA attacked Nancy Pelosi and her husband Paul." Notice how quickly that story fell apart. It was a special friend of Paul's that he invited over that the little pillow fight got out of hand. But notice they're not retracting or correcting the assailant. They're still trying to portray him as a MAGA guy. Nothing MAGA about him. Vote like your life depends on it. Because it does. Because remember, that's all they've got right now is fear, fear, fear. And I don't know, does this sound like they're inciting a January 6th to you?
Really, this is a literally call to arms.
It's the one aspect of the polling data that we don't have. There's no prediction for it. There's no way to categorize it this time because people are being quiet. They may be saying the right things if they're so inclined to talk to a pollster. But when they are alone in that voting booth, they have had it. The Democrats have way overplayed their hand. They are the authoritarians. They are the threat to democracy, and even Democratic voters understand that. Winston Churchill motivated an entire nation to stand up against the Nazis. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, though I did not agree with his political ideologies, motivated an economically depressed America. These men spoke inspiring words. They knew how to uplift. Our current leadership comes out, they scorn, they scold, They threaten. FDR once said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." And the Democrats are now saying, "We have nothing to offer but fear. Be afraid of MAGA. MAGA attacked our Capitol. MAGA attacked Nancy Pelosi and her husband Paul." Notice how quickly that story fell apart. It was a special friend of Paul's that he invited over that the little pillow fight got out of hand. But notice they're not retracting or correcting the assailant. They're still trying to portray him as a MAGA guy. Nothing MAGA about him. Vote like your life depends on it. Because it does. Because remember, that's all they've got right now is fear, fear, fear. And I don't know, does this sound like they're inciting a January 6th to you?